Hi folks, Eric from Hit Subscribe here, and today I am doing yet another edition in the Freelancer Q&A series of videos that I do here in Circle and then later published to the community YouTube channel. So I'm going to answer a question about freelancing today, and that one is a pretty simple one. Should service businesses like freelancers offer refunds? And actually, I don't think I've ever addressed this on the channel before, and it's a pretty interesting question. This is one where I really don't have a definitive answer. I'll talk about what I have historically done when it comes to this over the years, and the answer to that is generally yes. I've always offered, let's call it, some form of refund, and to this day we do that with Hit Subscribe. But I don't know that that is a right answer per se. It is simply one that's always made sense for me, but it's really a question of risk and trade-offs, and that's what I'm going to walk through in thinking about how to approach this, because I genuinely don't believe there's like an ethically or morally right or wrong answer to this question, nor do I think there is a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really kind of down to your sense of risk and reward and trade-offs. So let me get into why it is that I'm saying that, what I mean by that, by taking a look at or thinking about the nature of a refund for services. So if you offer a refund, that generally is going to mean that you do some kind of work, and in some fashion your client deems that work unacceptable for some reason. And in the event that your work is deemed unacceptable by that party, you give them their money back, or you don't ask for payment or what have you. This is essentially what we're talking about when it comes to a refund for services. So when you think about what that involves and what that means for both parties, if you have a policy of offering refunds, what you're really doing is engaging a form of risk mitigation on behalf of your clients. So if a client comes to you and says, I want you to build me some kind of automation, build me a thing, or write me a piece of content, or design me a graphic, when they agree to do business with you, they're taking some form of risk. And that risk is really going to vary a lot depending on the nature of the engagement, how you bill, etc. But agreeing to give you money in exchange for some kind of deliverable, potentially that they're going to use to achieve some kind of outcome or transformation, they, in engaging you in good faith, are going to be taking a risk that whatever you deliver them doesn't work for them. It doesn't help them achieve what they're trying to do. So if you offer them a refund, partial or total, you're offering them a form of risk mitigation. Now, on the flip side of that, you as the service provider are accepting a form of risk. So if you turn around and offer a refund versus just saying, sorry, sign on the dotted line, and then I'm going to do stuff, and there's no universe where you get your money back, that latter thing is less risky for you. The one where you agree to give them their money back if something doesn't work is more risky for you. So if you think about any engagement between you and a client, there is going to be some amount of shared risk no matter what. And a refund policy is, or any form of guarantee that you might provide, is really just going to be a matter of along the spectrum of you versus the client absorbing all the risk. You're kind of setting a slider there between the two of you. So that's really what we're talking about. And so the question becomes, who in the service provider and client relationship should absorb most of the risk? And that's really going to depend on situation and context. So for instance, if you are, I mean, this wouldn't really fall under the umbrella of freelancers anymore, but if you're a sort of true consultant, you're an expert in achieving some kind of outcome or transformation for clients, and you are value pricing engagements, if you're the expert and they're bringing you in to be the expert and they are not the expert, I could see you absorbing a lot more risk in that situation because you are ostensibly an expert. You understand. You should be able to come in and de-risk the situation for yourself through discovery. So let's say, for instance, that I was an expert in, I'm just thinking of something that's top of mind because I wrote a blog post about this today, but let's say that I left Hit Subscribe behind and I were going to go into business where I was doing nothing but working with clients who had declining traffic on their site, and I was going to come in and say, yeah, I can help you get your traffic back. Now, the reason I would offer something like that is because by creating this dashboarding offering I've been creating over the last 6 months, I have become an expert in declining traffic. So I can come in and recognize at a glance, why is their traffic declining? What would it take to get it back? And so on and so forth. Now, as an expert in this, I would be inclined to offer some kind of guarantee to the client in and around my expertise, meaning if certain conditions are met going into the engagement, I would say, yeah, if I can't, recover this percentage of your traffic, I will refund you the cost of this engagement, because I would be confident in that outcome based on past experience. Now, this might sound insanely risky to you, but because of my expertise in that, I would also recognize in advance and could surface during discovery things that they were doing that would threaten my ability to deliver that outcome. So if, for instance, they were to say, like, yeah, we want you to get us our traffic back, but we're not going to give you access to our analytics tool, or we don't have any analytics, I would say, well, never mind. I'm not going, I can't even begin to assess, where your traffic is or where it's going. We don't have any visibility in this. We can't possibly measure it. This is a degenerative and silly engagement. Or likewise, if they were to say, sure, we want your help in traffic recovery, but everything you're going to change about every line of content has to go through 3 rounds of review, through a whole gauntlet of people on our site, I would say, no, because in all probability, from an editorial perspective, those people are going to introduce requests that have nothing to do with my charter. So I'm not going to accept risk in this situation. And in that situation, I might then say, how about a different form of engagement where I tell you what to do, but I don't assume as much responsibility or accountability for the outcome. So sure, we can still engage, but you're introducing things that prevent me from controlling the outcome. So I'm no longer going to take on this risk that we're talking about. So I'm getting a little bit far afield of the idea of refunds here, but hopefully it is in service of helping you understand when you might and might not offer a refund. On one end of the spectrum, if you're offering freelance labor, I would fairly rarely offer refunds. And the reason for that is labor is generally non-strategic. If you're being conscripted to write a piece of content or something, or if you're being conscripted to go on to a client's site and implement a feature or something like that, you are probably not being included in any kind of strategic conversations, meaning you're unlikely to have line of sight as to like why they're writing that blog post or commissioning that feature or what they expect to get out of it or anything like that. So because you're just being brought in to execute some labor and you're not having line of sight to the outcome they expect, let alone being given the sort of freedom to impact that outcome, it doesn't make a lot of sense to absorb that kind of risk because you are also not getting commensurate upside and you're not participating in strategy. So if you're just being brought in to deliver a feature, for instance, I might just create like some sort of flat pricing for that feature, and assuming you actually deliver the feature, there's no real refund policy to be had there potentially. At the opposite end of the spectrum, again, if you are the expert and you're being brought in to help them deliver an outcome and they really give you the keys to the kingdom and they defer to you on strategy, then I would offer a pretty substantial risk mitigation to them in the form of variable or outcome based compensation for you, or offering refunds if the transformation is not achieved, and so on. And that's a good check for you as a service provider, because if you are that confident and they're giving you that much trust and authority, you want to take on some risk, because if you are that good and knowledgeable, you want to approach that cautiously, kind of the way doctors, wind up getting paid more, or surgeons or whatever. They're, you're putting your life in their hands, and presumably they're good and expert at what they're doing, and they have earned that kind of trust. So that's really how I would think about the risk reward spectrum there in thinking through refunds. Now, in terms of you as a service provider offering refunds, it's a powerful quality of life tech. So if you are, and this could apply even if you are doing something simple like writing blog posts or implementing like simple features where there's pretty like clear and simple scope. I personally, even in those situations where I had just kind of said you might think about not doing it, or I could see the case not to do it, I would still do it. And in fact, hit subscribe sells blog posts. And if you say you want your money back, we just do that, no questions asked. For one thing, it's a powerful quality of life tactic. Meaning, if you're a service provider, and let's say a client commissions you to do some work and maybe you're billing in arrears, or better yet, you're billing up front, but you kind of take that money and put it into escrow. So a client pays you for this feature, you take that money, you stick it into your bank account, you don't touch it, and you go about implementing the feature. If the client makes your life utterly miserable, or they're just unpleasant to deal with, or they're making outrageous demands or whatever, I personally would always want to be in the position where I can just cut a refund check and say, you know what, never mind, here's all of your money back, lose my phone number. That's just me, but that's what I mean about a powerful quality of life tactic. So if you have the book of business diversification to be able to do that, or the runway, or what have you, a situation of life where you can make that happen, it is really easy to sleep better at night knowing that's possible. And there is a limited degree to which you need to put up with, just like awful quality of life stuff and nightmare clients. And actually, why don't I speak to pros and cons, I guess, of having a refund policy. So on the pro side, like I said, powerful quality of life. You don't ever have to limp along in mutually miserable engagements. If you offer a refund policy, you wind up having the ability to just pull the trigger on that proactively. Likewise, even if you don't want to pull the trigger, you don't want to fire the client, but they're unhappy, if they're unhappy and you say, no, 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 but here I have a policy, they're going to make you unhappy. It's just a matter of time. So that's just the other side of the quality of life coin, is like, you don't want to, at least in my experience, lumber along in a mutually unhappy relationship. There are some other things beyond the quality of life as well. Because offering a refund is a form, and a very visible and legible form, of helping clients de-risk, it will make your sales process easier. So if you're talking to somebody and they say like, well, I want to pay you to implement this feature, what if it doesn't go well, this, that, or the other? You know what, like, if you're not happy for any reason, I'll give you all of your money back. That powerfully overcomes a buying objection, which in turn makes your sales process easier. So that is a strong pro, is that hanging your hat on some form of guarantee, specifically a refund, can tend to overcome buying objections, make buyers more comfortable, and improve your win rate. And generally, it's also good for your book of business if firing clients is easier. So there's the quality of life aspect, but if you are limping along to the end of a mutually unhappy engagement because you can't or won't give the client their money back, that's a lot of time you're going to be spending continuing to collaborate, making each other miserable, having to take up all of your headspace and cognitive load, instead of going out and finding better clients. So if you cut the cord early, fail fast, and move on to better clients, you're going to spend more of your time, happier dealing with better clients, but more crucially, you're going to spend more of your time working with clients that might rebuy over and over again, whereas the one that's demanding a refund of you is not going to rebuy from you. So all of the time you're spending on that relationship, such as it is going to be wasted time. So avoiding that is the pro. There are obvious cons to having a refund policy. One of those cons is the financial risk that you're assuming. So because you're absorbing risk, sure, your sales process gets easier, but your life gets riskier. So, and especially if you're short on runway, or if your book of business is light or whatever, you might not even be in a financial position to do this. But generally speaking, whatever your status, you are running the risk of going out and doing a fairly substantial amount of work and not making money from it. And that is a very real, very acute risk. So the con of offering a refund policy is absolutely 100% financial risk. Now, there is also maybe the risk of being taken advantage of. In my experience, if you're in the B2B space with anybody that's even remotely reputable, this just isn't a thing in the way that you, as an especially newly minted freelancer, might tend to think it will be a thing, which is, what if I offer a refund policy on feature implementation, and I do business with, this mid-market company, and I do all the work, and then they're like, haha, I want my money back. I'm taking advantage of your refund policy not to pay you. I guess that's always theoretically possible. It won't happen. For what it's worth, and I could theoretically be wrong about this, but in 7 years of Hit Subscribe running, we have never once not received payment from a client. When you're in the B2B world, clients pay. They don't play games like that. It's just not common. There are circumstances where clients might try to claw some freebies or extra hours out of you or kind of like negotiate, but just a whole cloth engage you and then shank you via your refund policy, that's just not a thing that really comes up. I know some people out there might beg to differ and encourage you to sign like onerous contracts with like bulletproof blah blah blah, but let me tell you something straight away. If you're a freelancer, your contract saying that you don't offer refunds and all blah 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 is fine. Like, the clients don't care about that. If you and a client wound up going to court, like, the contract would be kind of a joke. The contract only matters in as much as you would have the ability to enforce it. And if you as a freelancer are doing business with an established company, you have no ability to enforce that. They have lawyers and resources at your disposal. They could bankrupt you in lawyers' fees before you ever saw the inside of a courtroom. So the point I'm making here is, yeah, in theory, you could think about the risk in the B2B world that you are doing business with some unsavory party and they take advantage of your refund policy to screw you over. It is not realistically going to happen. That's just not how business is done in B2B, especially with freelancers. It would be such a nightmarishly bad PR look for some company to screw over their freelance, workforce. It just wouldn't work that way. Now, this might be a thing if you find yourself dealing with unproven or newly minted bootstrappers, like entrepreneurs, or if you're in the B2C space. There are plenty of people that wander into Applebee's and say that their food was undercooked after eating it all to get a refund. So if you're doing some kind of service in the B2C world, you might deal with stuff like this. But by the way, if you're a freelancer, don't do business with B2C. It's just, nah. Look for, you're offering high ticket services, presumably, unless you're wallowing around in info product purgatory. So if you're doing large scale type business, you should almost certainly be doing it with B2B already. And if you're not, start doing it that way, and then you won't have to worry about this type of stuff. So anyway, in theory, being taken advantage of with your refund policy is an ostensible con, but in practice it won't be. So really the main con when it comes to offering a refund policy is generally going to be the financial risk of valid cases where they take advantage of your refund policy. So if you say, I write blog posts for you, and if for any reason you're not happy with the blog post, I'll offer you a refund. Only do that if you can afford it, because you have constructed a scenario where it's perfectly valid of them to say, for whatever reason they want, I want my money back. And if you've said that, you should honor it. And you should only honor that if you're prepared to deal with the financial risk of doing so. So let me kind of close out with the advice that I would offer someone that's a freelancer in the B2B world, a service-based freelancer of whatever kind might watch this channel. I personally would recommend having a policy to offer refunds, but I would be clear about the circumstances and rationale for which you're going to offer a refund. So if you're doing something like a productized service, like you sell blog posts, in that situation, and Hit Subscribe does this, I would offer a refund for any reason, because the risk on one single blog post is just not like super high. So go ahead and offer a refund on something like that, low cost, relatively speaking, productized service, because it's fairly straightforward to do. It's a good look, and it's not overly risky to you. And it's easy to kind of say, for any reason, that's the circumstances. Now, if you're doing something that is more mutually risky, like implementing a feature that's going to take $40,000 worth of app dev, now you want to be clearer about your refund policy. And here I might do something like set out project milestones and say, you're going to commit to spending a quarter of the allocated spend here up to milestone 1. And then at that point, we can mutually agree to part ways, and we're going to do that to milestone 2 and milestone 3, etc. So what I would suggest doing for things that aren't just clear and easy productized services is still offer refunds, offer ways to de-risk, Offer ways that both of you can break up if the thing isn't going well, because that's no fun. So think that through, but then be clear about the protocol for asking for refunds or non-payment or whatever for the clients to you, and the circumstances under which that can happen. So I would think through things like, how can you deconstruct the work to have milestone points that serve as a potential for parting of ways? And then after maybe they're reviewing your work, is there some period after which you say, look, a month has gone by. If you haven't expressed any discontent by now, you're never going to. So offer the refund, I would say, but in general, reason through the different scenarios that might come up, and then be a little clearer about those, and do so during your sales process. I don't know that if I were you, I would make it my goal not to have to do this kind of thing with contracts. I would endeavor to have the policy be clear and transparent enough during your sales process that you don't need to find yourself busting out some piece of paper later and pointing at it and saying, see here, read the fine print. So make your refund policy pretty clear, pretty intuitive, and then stick to it, and make sure that you're in a position where the level of risk that you're assuming is tolerable to you as the practitioner. Again, your mileage may vary on all of that. You might get people out there that say never offer refunds. I don't know, but that's me. This is what I would do. I think it's a good look. It makes you look like a pro to offer refunds and to be expert enough to sort of walk through the circumstances under which those refunds would be relevant. So I would do that if I were you. Hopefully that is somewhat informative or interesting, and I will catch you all next time.